What's that? Howls from the woods, movement under the water, something you notice out of the corner of your eye, but when you look, it's gone. This is Cryptid Talk. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is having a good day, and woo, it is Friday. Well, thank goodness it is Friday finally. Excuse me, a long week it's been. Thankfully now, we'll be hopefully be having a 3-day weekend, hopefully for some people with Memorial Day and everything. Excuse me, sorry. But for some people who work in retail, yeah, I know, kind of an unfortunate thing there. But so before we actually get into this week's episode, which is it's going to be a fun one, that's for sure. I would also like to apologize a little bit for last week's episode. I'm, as I mentioned in the very first episode, I'm still trying to figure out what kind of format I want the podcast to be. I, because sometimes, a lot of podcasts have it kind of like segmented out in a way. It's like, all right, here's the beginning, the middle, and the end. They do the talkie stuff, and then they do like ads, and then and then they do something else like a segment or something like that. But it's all broken up in some sort of like just a formula of how they have it, put together. And I'm still trying to figure it out what mine would be. So if it sounded like everything information was a little jumbled and there was information that's like, oh, this information that was said here, would it should have been more comfortable been said earlier or later or something like that. If it did sound unorganized to you, I apologize. I'm back when I back when I kind of started doing this a little bit back in college. I did it for the radio show at the community college that I went to, and back then I'd only really been into the subject of, I guess, Bigfoot, cryptozoology, and stuff like that for only about, goodness gracious, maybe only about like Finding Bigfoot came out in 2011, so yeah, maybe only about maybe like two, three, between like 2 to 4 years, maybe. So I was still pretty new into the whole world of learning more about all these different cryptids and everything else like that. And so and obviously not knowing as much just knowledge, experience, and just a general know-how about it compared to nowadays, especially when it comes to Bigfoot, since I like to consider myself I'm pretty knowledgeable. Am I a master? No, not saying anything like that at all. But I feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable in a form of it. But I know a lot more now, and I can talk a lot more about things that I have written down and just stuff I know compared to back then where I had all these notes I had, but like the one problem I had was that I didn't have enough to talk about sometimes, and I had to find ways of making sure that I had enough time to fit the like 55 minutes I had per week for the recording of the actual show itself back then. Well, nowadays I can just expand off of something just so much more, and I didn't have to worry about like, oh, I got all these notes. I got to get through all these notes in the span of an episode. So I feel like, okay, like it's like, oh, do I get through all my notes? Oh, I was like, oh no, I went through all my notes way too quickly beforehand, and now I'm like, oh, what do I talk about for the rest of it? But now, and I also think I sounded a little bit more nervous last time too. So, for all that, I apologize. But I think I'm a lot better now. I just I'm a lot more calm, and just even though there should be no reason I should be worry and stuff like that. I'm talking about cryptozoology, my passion, the thing I love like just so much is it's just I just love it so much in the world. So just wanted to get that over with and everything else like that. Actually, before, no, I'll say it now. whether or not it be before the end of the episode. But I would like to say that I there will be a paranormal convention, Central Pennsylvania uh, Paranormal Festival in Ellsberg, Pennsylvania. Um, the calendar. Should have prepared for this ahead of time. August 3rd. August 3rd in Ellsberg, Pennsylvania. I will be having a table there. I know it's a little early in the sense of it, but I wanted to try to get some, get some more listeners for the podcast. Maybe meet some people who have listened beforehand. Not raising my hopes too high about that, but hey, you never know. So if you are able to get to Central Pennsylvania, Ellsberg, Pennsylvania, it's kind of like up there around like the Poconos a little bit, at least, or in that general area. It's actually about like 7-10 minutes from Knoebels. So if you know where that is, not far from there. So come on by down to the festival, August 3rd, because I would love to. I'll hopefully I'm slowly working on it, getting ideas and everything, but I'll have maybe some merchandise and and stuff like that. And if you have stuff you want to talk about with me in person, love to meet people and everything like that. So I just wanted to I'll mention that just letting people know that for new listeners at the beginning of every episode that it's coming. And so hopefully mark the calendar, August 3rd, Ellsberg, Pennsylvania. Hope to see you all there, and follow the Facebook page for it, Central Pennsylvania Paranormal Festival, I believe it's called. I'll put a link for it in the bottom of the Facebook page. So, all right, we got all the technical stuff out of the way and everything. So now let's get to the meat of the subject. So I decided to go on a different direction for the topic of this episode. Started with, generically talking about, cryptozoology and what it is. And then, of course, we start with, the big man himself, the big old hairy one, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, starting off with that. Um, and, and so, and not, and then thinking like, all right, well, let's instead of just going on a list of really well-known cryptids that most people talk about when they think of cryptozoology, they think of, you know, Bigfoot, Mothman, Loch Ness Monster, Jersey Devil, like Lizard Man, kind of like stuff like that. People normally kind of go around those general routes first. I'm going to go in a different direction to a more who kn- if it's more paranormal, if it's more physical, you know what it is, but because normally for me, the paranormal side of things like ghosts and stuff like that, which I believe in, is very interesting. I'm more interested in more of like the physical stuff, and so I just find those is a lot more interesting to me. Not saying that that those don't exist at all. The physical stuff is just more interesting to me. So we're actually go into, in some ways, even just talking about it, and to some people too, it's just tough enough it is. We're going with the very interesting, difficult to talk about subject for a lot of people in direction of skinwalkers. Skinwalkers, if you don't know, let's just get into it then. Skinwalkers are a are a is a not is a cryptid from the Navajo regions of Central America, not Central America, goodness gracious, of the Central United States. There we go. The Navajo normally reside around Mexico, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. They the Navajo were lived in those general areas. Those areas are normally mostly very deserty, sand, cactuses, and just very dried areas to live in out in the west central United States. Skinwalkers are well known in Navajo lore of these they're kind of like shapeshifter like beings. They are normally originally started because the legend for skinwalkers in Navajo go back very, very, very far. Like it pretty much like ingrained in their culture. When you really do know, you really do really deep look into it deeply. And so what skinwalkers are, they are kind of a shapeshifter, and the descriptions of what they are and what they look like vary in many different ways, but there also are some similarities to them. So skinwalkers generally are someone like a witch who or someone like that who has dabbled in black magic. And so after doing black magic, they wear the pelts of coyotes, and they wear them on they wear the pelts, and they think are able to transform into the coyotes and to sneak up on unsuspecting people and attack them or other animals and stuff like that. Why they do it? It's kind of hard to tell. A lot of times for stuff like this and a lot of different media and everything, it's always for like power or just going against their society or something like that. But so yeah, so they would these witches or would wear the skins of animals and then would then transform into them. Normally coyotes were normally the most common thing for them to transform into, because coyotes are pretty much everywhere, but they seem to be a lot more relative in those four states. But again, coyotes, we look at the map, I think coyotes are almost in every single state in the U.S. minus here and there. But sometimes though they can be seen as wolves, and they more or less can replicate a lot of different animals there. Sometimes they've been seen as horses, donkeys, dogs, but normally coyotes and wolves seem to be the most common thing, because a lot of time people see they're exploring the desert, and then all of a sudden they see as people normally describe, a very large coyote, way bigger than an average coyote, because coyotes aren't that big. Coyotes are probably maybe about I would believe coyotes are probably a bit smaller than an actual other than like a Labrador, or maybe around the same type. But normally it might be at least a little bit smaller. But coyotes are not very big. But they can be a nuisance with small dogs and cats and stuff like that. Just they are kind of a nuisance animal a little bit, so since they go in packs. But people always describe them as seeing them like that, or just a very big wolf. That's the one thing that people always go. It's like they see a wolf or a coyote, but it's way bigger than a normal coyote or wolf that they would normally see. And then sometimes it just walks off. But then when the cases come into the play of where and all of a sudden it stands up, and then so it kind of stands up like a man in a way. Sometimes they stand up like a normal coyote, but then they stand up like they're completely comfortable walking on their little coyote legs. But then sometimes they kind of look like they stand up and have a bit more of a human-like structure, a little bit. Instead of just being like, oh, a coyote just stood up on its hind legs, it's standing up, but now it kind of looks like it has broad shoulders and it takes on a bit more of a man perspective of it. Now, I'm not gonna try to delve into it too much, but I'll get into it a little bit here. Some people kind of say that skinwalkers are kind of get an IP or get a resemblance, or people think about it when it comes to like werewolves kind of thing. Like it's just a wolf-like creature that stands up and is big as is like, excuse me, taller than any man, but then looks very canine. But we're not getting into that perspective of too much, because don't worry, I we will be talking about Dogman, Beast of Bray Road, the Rougarou, and all those. Like we will get into Dogman, because I've been loving all these Dogman stories that I've been reading about, and there's all the different things I've been hearing about them. So we will get into those. We will get into that soon, and that will be a fun one. Don't worry. So yeah, so skin they and then so they impersonate all these different animals and everything like that, and they're also very fast. They're strong and fast. There have been stories of them chasing after people's cars in a full-on sprint, banging into cars while they're chasing them, breaking windows. Like skinwalkers in Navajo lore are very, very dangerous. Like, they are not your friends. They are not they there is nothing good to come from encountering a skinwalker except run for your life. Me personally, as like, I would love to see something like this, because when it comes to, like, it's like it's kind of like when you want to, like, watching a nature documentary or something, and you're seeing this documentary. It's like, wow, look at that lion. That lion that just took down that gazelle and it's just eating it. Stuff like that. Like, something that's so cool and so fascinating that that animal you're looking at is dangerous. But it's like, man, I really wish I could see that in person, but safely and where my life is not in danger. This is the same thing with me when it comes to skinwalkers and a few other cryptids out there, because there's a lot of cryptids. Yes, I will admit there are a lot of cryptids out there that are very, very dangerous. Skinwalkers are one of them. There Nothing good can come from encountering a skinwalker at all whatsoever. But now, here and then, yeah, so skinwalkers, again, very fast. They impersonate animals to try to lure you away and stuff like that. There's even been some cases of them impersonating people's voices. There's a video I saw on the internet of a guy on his horse just going down the road, and then off to the side of the road they hear a "Hey!" Horse stops dead in its tracks. The horse is looking in the direction of where the sound came from. A little bit of time passes and you hear, "Hey!" But in the exact same tone in the first "Hey," and that horse was just done with that. That Without, like the sense of, like, its owner doing it, the horse turns back the way it came and just books it, just right down the road. I don't know exactly where this video was recorded, but I believe it was somewhere around in one of these four states. Just because looking at the environment of the road and the grass around it, anyways. So they like to impersonate voices to try to lure you into the woods and do whatever horrible things you can possibly think of with it. 'Cause again, they are not good, and they will they will take you out. And there's no way to shortcut. They will take you, and you'll probably never be seen again. I know. Skinwalkers are also probably one of the most terrifying cryptids out there, and I I would love to see one safely and from a distance, and with my life not in danger. But now here's the other side of skinwalkers that really really puts in the thought of what are they really? It kind of goes into what I kind of mentioned in the beginning of this, is like, are they something more physical, or are they something more spiritual, or are they maybe something? Maybe maybe a little both? Because there are there because Navajo are very spiritual people, and they're very in tune with nature and the spirits and ancestors and everything else like that. So apparently, skinwalkers are in the same general boat, too. They there will be times that the witch will cast a curse onto someone, like attach to a person, and then in hindsight will just never leave them alone. Like, daily, people have gotten things of like things like tapping on their windows, or like, or appearing more as like spirits, like these black shadowy figures that stand over their bed and are just watching them. And most of the time they don't really do anything, but they might just just freak people out, and with being around them and everything. And sometimes they just won't stop. Now, some people say that the best thing you can how that you can do for it is, like, some sort of like, some people say like sage, like sprinkling sage around, or putting salt around your house, some sort of blessing. Some people say that sometimes that stuff works. Sometimes people say it doesn't. So it's kind of hard to know what really to do when it comes to spiritual skinwalkers. Now, is this technically the same thing, or like, because now we're getting into into the side of cryptozoology of, is it spirit, is it more physical, or that was a word I'm looking for it. Not really. It's spiritual in a way, but just like yeah. So like, is it more physical or spiritual in a way? And so now we're kind of getting into like, the spiritual ghost side of things, instead of like the physical side, like a physical blood, like, flesh and blood creature. Which, who knows? Maybe you could do both. Because I believe that, because I won't get into this too deeply, because maybe we might talk about it in a future episode. But I do believe that there is a lot more to this world than we possibly know. What level and what that details, I don't know. Are there fairies, goblins, like druids, tree, like all like these mythical things that we've always heard in like fantasy stories of like wizards, and and all that stuff, like them fighting like dragons and everything. Is there like, there's some of it, probably it's not true, but I believe there's more to our world that I don't think that we are can ever physically comprehend. I, I I don't know for sure. I can't say for sure that goblins, fairies, do exist. Sure, I've seen some footages of stuff that I'm like, I can't explain what that is. Unfortunately, in the world that we live in today with technology, using video programs to make something look real, but it's actually not real. You know, Kind of hard to tell what's real or not real when it comes to all this. But I like to think that I believe that there is some more spiritualness in this world than we can possibly think of and can even comprehend. I believe there's a lot more there, and we will probably never really know if it's really if that any of stuff even exists. But whether or not skinwalkers are in that same category, or is it something else, it's hard to say. The Navajos say that skinwalkers, seem a bit more, or can do both, or do have a physical form, but also can like either project themselves in a more spiritual side of them, or just are more spiritual, and the physical is just like, here, let me make a little um what's the word for it? A little projection of myself, a little hologram. That's a better word for it, of me, and here you go, kind of thing. But we're at the moment, we'll talk about more on the fact that skinwalkers are a bit more on the physical side. Like, I go poke poke, I am poking you in the side, and oh no, I just lost an arm. Oh well, yeah, that was kind of fun though. But I think that's what we'll focus for the time being of right now. So, I just accidentally hit my mic with my hand. My bad. So something else about skinwalkers is that a lot of people report them having like this blood curdling scream, a scream that they've never heard of, way worse than any bobcat, mountain lion, or anything, and it just sounds like it, but just 10 times worse. Because if you have never heard the recording of a mountain lion, bobcat, a cougar, of them like doing their screaming howls from the woods, you would think it literally sounds like a woman getting murdered right there. That's what it sounds like. So if you're ever free, listen to the recordings of what those animals sound like, and now just imagine that, just worse. That's what a lot of people talk about when it comes to skinwalkers and what they sound like. This, or just I couldn't even even try to replicate it. But it's a very blood curdling scream, and it like most people, especially people who've lived in these areas for like ever, and all of a sudden they hear something like that, it's terrifying. Skinwalkers are terrifying, and why they are terrifying, like even more terrifying than we've already talked about so far, we'll get into that shortly. Oh, trust me, this next part of the episode after this, it's it's very questioning and very interesting for sure. So the more about skinwalkers over there. There's at some point, especially if you follow the subject of cryptozoology or anything like that. Now, whether or not you've actually followed like UFOs or you even heard of skinwalkers ahead of time, at some point in your career or looking at information, you probably have heard of Skinwalker Ranch before. Skinwalker Ranch is probably like the, as people would argue, the hot spot of Skinwalker UFO activity, probably in the country. Even can I guess that's kind of somewhere kind of around there on Area 51, but that's like Skinwalker Ranch. That is where the crazy, that's where the unknown happen, and all the crazy nonsense that happens out there, because it's also in the deserty area, so that's where it's already in the hot spot of skinwalkers already. Now there have been multitude of people who have gone to Skinwalker Ranch, people who are looking into the physical side of it, the ghostly side of it, because people, again, they seem to be more like ghostly in their forms that they come up with. And the moment I'm watching the Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch, a TV show that's going over all of the all going over and trying to investigate what's really going on at Skinwalker Ranch. But you know, I'm far behind, and I don't know if they've really ever found anything else. But what happens a lot at Skinwalker Ranch is cow mutilations. But as cow mutilations happen a lot of different parts of the U.S. and even even just the world in general too. But cow mutilations and just cows dying mysteriously seems to be a real thing at Skinwalker Ranch, where cows sometimes would just mysteriously just die. They would just die on the ground. Sometimes there would be nothing wrong with them. But then sometimes there would always be like these really strange, very precise incisions made around them, uh, parts of their face gone, organs taken out, and these incisions that are made into the bodies seem to be almost like with like the sharpest, you know, medical knife. I forget the actual word for it, but it's like the most precise thing. Even just cutting like that, like almost done like perfectly. Where there's even like no blood around the body of where they find it. But sometimes they seem like the incision is a bit more is a bit more refined, much more clear cut than just using a simple knife. Some people think that might be some sort of, alien mutilations of them using like lasers to make all these very precise cuts and doing whatever they do or anything like that. Skinwalker Ranch is just a very unique place when it has that kind of stuff that happens. An interesting story that I've heard a lot of stories around Skinwalker Ranch, a lot. The one that is still it mind boggles me to this day is that on one at I can't remember if it's the current owners of the ranch or before the current owners of the ranch. They were talking about how they had a bunch of cattle out before they weren't just out and about, and then next thing you know, there's all this noise, but then there's like no noise, and all the cattle are gone, and then next thing you know, they're all in this trailer. Now, in the span of the time of when the owners saw the cattle, they were there. A very short amount of time passed, and this was all still daytime, by the way. They come back, and then all the cattle somehow got into this trailer. No idea how. It may not have been a trailer, like a small trailer, but something enough that like all these cows should not have been able to get in there so easily, so quickly, without barely any foot around it. And they go out, and they're all in there. There's like how did all the cattle get in here? So obviously, of course, they open the door and all the cattle just spew out of there and everything. But like all the cattle were spooked, and they all just were just not happy with the current situation of how that happened. And even to this day, no one knows how all the cattle got in there so quickly and just so effortlessly, because obviously myself, I'm not a farmer or anything like that, so I can't speak out of experience or act like I know kind of thing. But you know cattle and cows and all the different kind of similar animals like that are sometimes not always the easiest things to kind of like maneuver them where you want them to go, especially in the small little trailer that, again, it may not have been like a trailer, but like that's the best way to try to say, or a small little building or something like that. They're all put in there, and they were freaking out. You can't just calmly just put all of them in there, not to be like, all right, you guys all be chill. All right, good, come on, get your little cow butts in there, scoot, scoot, or anything like that. No, it doesn't work like that. They are, I would believe, not a very easy animal to to easily maneuver so quick, especially so quickly on how it happened. Sure, if you had some time, maybe, but even then, they would not make it easy. But the fact that they all happened so quickly with that. It was very, very mind boggling for sure. And I always thought that was just so that story was just so interesting that it happened. Like, yeah, sure, there's a lot of other stuff that happens there. But that one just caught my attention more than just, the UFO and all the skinwalker stuff that's seen around the property. And yes, and just a very unique cryptid, that's for sure. And everything like that. So yeah, so skinwalkers, they look like very big coyotes. Wolves can just mimic animals, and a lot of times, a lot of animals like dogs are very aware of seem to be very aware of skinwalkers when they're in their physical forms, or when they're around. Especially dogs are barking at like animals that you be normal to you and they wouldn't normally bark at, but they're barking viciously at that deer or that donkey or that horse or that cow, and they're just going off about it. But but again, skinwalkers can copy animals and try to sound like humans to try to lure you towards them. But thankfully, skinwalkers seem to mostly only be in the areas of New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. And you probably think you're safe, right? Well, unfortunately, folks, this is the other half of the podcast where I say wrong. I Skinwalkers are a lot more wide range than people think. Now, again, skinwalkers are normally known to be a Navajo thing, in the special Navajo nature reserves and Navajo areas and everything else like that in those 4 states. But skinwalkers, or whatever they are are everywhere. They are seen. There are stories of skinwalkers being like creatures. Excuse me, in almost every state, even in different parts of the world, people said they are seeing these things. Now, I'm just going to call them just by these skinwalkers, whether or not they are skinwalkers, but they are that is just what people have a tendency of calling them because of what they're able to do. And but we'll just go in the sense of these skinwalkers have a tendency of being much more different than the Navajo skinwalkers that we were just talking about. These skinwalkers seem to be a lot more dangerous, a lot more cunning, and personally seem to be much worse than the Navajo versions of the skinwalkers. If they even are the same thing, there could be another cryptid that does something very similar, but people just know of skinwalkers and just like put one A and B together, and they get C. So these skinwalkers, let's go to my notes. These other skinwalkers have the same very similar ability that they are able to transform into animals. they can transform into any animal. The generic, deer, wolves, coyotes, bear, different stuff like that. Deer, coyotes, and wolves seem to be the most common animals that they have a tendency of turning into, especially in some possible videos of them, going to dogs. But now the terrifying side of these skinwalkers, the ones that are not found on the Navajo reservations, they can turn into people. I know that seems hard to believe, but just stay with me for just a little bit. Just sit your tukish there and just hold on a minute. There are a lot of stories that I've read, people that are swearing on their lives that these things have happened to them, of skinwalkers luring people away, luring people away from the campsite to either copy them and then take over their spot, and then go be amongst their friends or family or whoever they're with. There might be a story of person A, B, C, and D are out camping. A goes to pee, but then A comes back in a slightly different spot, asking B to come out into the woods for them for a moment, and then leaves B out there and then lives or lures A out into the woods, and then A comes back as as someone else to try to lure someone else. They are tricky. They act as someone else to lure you away, take your spot, and then do whatever. Most of the times, a lot of these things, they seem to be unsuccessful on what their possible or whatever mission is. And unfortunately, sometimes in some stories, they have succeeded from some things. I have people who've swore that, of what's going on. There was a story one time where, one person, their friend goes and pees and comes back a little slightly different and odd. They seem to be keeping themselves a lot more quiet, but they look and sound just like them. But then as they're, during that, they're trying to they're trying to lure them into the woods. Like, oh, hey, would you like to come out into the woods with me for a moment? Help me get firewood. Or, they would drive, and the one person, their friend would be like, so should we stop here for the night, or when are we gonna come back to the woods? They're acting very robotic. They're not acting like themselves. But then like when the people are not working with them or anything like that, the person then got out of the car, and then just then they drive up and leave them there. But then they find their friend later on, called them and been like, what the heck, guys? I was like, what the heck, You left me in the woods. You led me out into the woods and then left me there, and I come back and you're all gone. It's like, what are you talking about, B? You were in the car with us. It's like, no, I wasn't. And then that whole dots connecting start to happen, and people and this is some of the few cases that the skinwalkers don't succeed with what they're doing. There are some stories, unfortunately, where they do take over people, and the original person is never found. There's one story of searching for a missing person that went missing, that went hiking in the woods and got lost. After a bit, they found the person, and he was acting just very strange. Brought him back to the car, and unfortunately, there were two officers that came. They got separated. One cop found the guy and brought him back to the car. Was finally able to get in contact with the other officer with them, and he's like, "Oh yeah, hey, I found the guy." I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm with the guy right now." He's like, "What?" Like, yeah, like I'm with him right now. He's a little banged up right now, but he's perfectly fine. He's like, "What do you mean? He's in my car." And after a bit of silence, the other officer's like, "Lock your car and just wait for me to get there." But apparently, within that moment, the door was already wide open, and the person in the car was already long gone. So apparently, the first person that the officer found was actually possibly a skinwalker trying to copy the lost hiker. And Now, and there are worse stories of them like taking over or replacing a college friend, and he's like living with them in this dorm for like ever, and they never find the real friend. And skinwalkers are terrifying. Now these skinwalkers seem to be a bit more. They're also in how they look is also it's also different. They don't seem to look like the full on person build. Yeah, sure they do look humanoid in some aspects, but they are not wearing the the cloaks of the skins of animals or anything. Sure, there are some stories they do say that, but most of the time they just seem to be like these very deformed like creatures. Sometimes it's like also when people see them they're trying to transform into a friend of yours, but it's like when they find when you see them it's like you stop them like mid transformation, so they sound very weird, and they just sound like they're weird recording robotic in a way, and yet they look like very distorted. And unfortunately people have sworn their lives that they've seen these things happen, because the other thing that's also terrifying is that they will try to sound like people, like a husband or wife, be like, honey, come out to the woods for a moment, and the person comes out like, where are you, like, I can't see you. But then your the actual husband or wife is actually inside, not outside, and they're trying to lure them out either by looking like them or just using their voice. That's when it comes to the whole thing of like, if you're ever camping in the woods. Actually, no, actually, not yet, not yet. We'll get to that in a moment. But a lot of time when people have heard these things in the woods, especially when they're trying to replicate people's voices, the way you can tell sometimes that they are not real is that a lot of times they like to replicate things that you've said before. If you live on a property, you're talking with like someone like, oh, like, ah, like you say a phrase, or you're talking to like a family member or a friend, and if these things are nearby, they will listen. They will pick up on your phrases, either record. It's like they have like a record button, like a recording in their body. Like they're able to record your voice, and then replay it back, but it sounds distorted and just not right at all, and it's just terrifying. And people, they hear that, they're like, they're on their backyard at night, they're just drinking, like just really, enjoying the night's air and everything, and they hear, honey, come over here, or like, or what was that, or like something like that, but like, and that's all they hear. And then sometimes they're like, hello, like, who's there? And then they hear, and they say the same thing, but in the exact same tone. Because no matter, like, some people might be able to do it pretty close. You can say a phrase like I'm not even gonna try to do that, like, like hot crust buns, a simple phrase like that. And some people might be, for a simple phrase like that, they might be able to say it in the exact tone, just volume and everything. They may be able to say it the exact same way pretty easily. But when it comes to these things replicating your voice, they can the record it is sounded the exact same way. Like they literally recorded it, pressed the replay button, and played it back. Like exactly. There's no tone, there's no difference in tone, in volume, or anything. It's like almost like like copy and paste the audio that these things replicate. And that is terrifying. A lot of people have heard that, and yeah, sure, they and okay, continue on with their look. Sorry, the look is also seems a bit more like a lot more skinny and scrawny, but like kind of like long, like disproportionate arms and legs. But even though they look very decrepit, like their body's just the skin is just stretched over their body, they're surprisingly strong and very fast. Like people are surprised on how strong these things are. Now, there's also stories of them wearing like look like they have like a deer's skull on their head, but a lot of times they're just like their eyes are just also very sunken in. It's like they got hollow eye sockets and where their eyes are supposed to be, and that's what makes them just pretty not very fun things to really deal with in a way. And you know, and like there are stories of them, like they will try to sound like a person and try to get you to come to them, and they'll be like, help me, help me. But it'll be, again, like I was just said before, it'd be said in that same exact tone, trying to lure you towards them. You ever hear that, do not go towards it. There was one recording I heard of this one biker who was about to go over this log, this fallen tree that was on the path. And as he was going over, he was like, help me. He heard like a help me. And then it's like, hello. It's like, help me. And as he heard that, he slowly heard something kind of coming towards him. And he decided not to cross over that log and went right back the other way. And in some ways, he could still hear something like, so in the audio, you could hear the leaves crackling as it's moving. And, oh, boy. I, I've heard stories, again, I've even heard some stories maybe around like the central PA where I am, that there was supposedly a skinwalker, you know, like same thing, like that blood curdling scream that they hear, and like these voices and everything, and just trying to lead people, towards them. Now, okay, we'll get into the fact of like what I think the what could they be and stuff like that, because there is one more thing to the one more kind of cryptid we'll kind of continue on with, is that I would consider in the same topic of skinwalkers and stuff like that, wendigos. Wendigos are another cryptid, very similar thing to skinwalkers. Not so much the whole changing into people. There are some stories, that they might and stuff like that. So who knows? To me, that could be skinwalkers, wendigos being in the same area, or some of these other skinwalkers might actually be wendigos and stuff like that. But now, what are wendigos? Well, wendigos are a, is again, this kind of like the Native Americans of, I forget the people that they're called up in there, but more or less they are kind of more or less in New England, up there in Maine and everything like that. Now, wendigos are have been told to be a very ugly looking cryptid, very ugly. They always seem to have look like they have a deer skull or on their head. They're they look like their skin is just falling off. Like, it's like almost like they're like a walking zombie human deer thing, and they act very very strange, and they do the same thing, but these things seem to be a lot more ferocious. They seem a lot more dangerous than in some form or fashion than traditional skinwalkers, because what they like to do, especially it seemed to be along the Appalachian Trail up there in Maine, they will try to scream like a woman, trying to get you to come close to them. So pretty much, I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, so that they can kill and eat you. There have been stories of, people, seeing and hearing them doing this, and, or like the stories going along with this. So now you're thinking like, wait, why is this happening? Well, there is a story in the culture up there of something called Wendigo psychosis, where pretty much the spirit of the Wendigo will take over someone and will pretty much slowly start turning them into a Wendigo, where they pretty much become cannibalistic and just eat people and anything all in between, and do all these tricks to try to lure you towards them and everything like that. And so they will do everything in their power to try to get you there. And sometimes simply just screaming like a woman or a person trying to get you to come to them isn't enough. There have been some cases of them literally breaking into, tents and getting children and, pets and like other people out of their tents, and there's nothing found of them. And sometimes what they find of them is all over the place. I know that sounds a little gruesome, but that is supposedly the reality of of Wendigos. Wendigos are very dangerous, terrifying cryptids that should not be should not be messed with. And same idea. Like sometimes a lot of Wendigos have like long limbs, sharp claws. Same thing, kind of like with these other skinwalkers, with their eyes sunken into their heads, so just like empty sockets. And yeah, so when it comes to like these other skinwalkers and Wendigos, they will try to use voices and women screaming and like help me, especially like they like to use like children to try to lure you into the woods. And I know this is a very different episode, a very it's like we're kind of going in the beyond, or where a lot of traditional cryptids might be and stuff like that. But if you are, I'm telling you this with a with firm belief. You ever go out into the woods, especially anywhere along the Appalachian Trail, no matter where along it, or you're up in Maine or anywhere, you hear screaming in the woods, or anyone saying "Help me," and if you say "Why? What's wrong?" and they don't reply back, and they just keep saying "Help me," or like they're not like responding properly, do not go towards it. Uh, unless they like unless that sounds like it really does sound like a person of like it's like oh please help me, it's like hello something like I don't know. These things are clever. These things are very very clever, and so just be very very mindful. Like I've told this to a few family members who said they were going to go camping out somewhere along the Appalachian Trail, and I've been like look, like not a lot of my family believes in this stuff, especially we start going to the whole side of like like Wendigos and Skinwalkers and stuff like that. But I've always told people, if like you ever go into those parts of the woods and you hear any of those kind of sounds I just mentioned, please ignore them and do not go towards them, because these things are trying to lure you out into the woods to possibly make you their next meal, or to take over a family member. These things do this. Now, minus the Navajo ones, what are these other skinwalkers? Are these really skinwalkers? Are they like changelings, or like doppelgangers or something like that? I don't know. People just call them skinwalkers just for the fact of what they're able to do, and able to transform into people. So people just kind of go with it for the time being. But what are they? They're It's one of those things that it's some certain cryptids, like at least like Bigfoot, and like you maybe could probably argue like Nessie and some of the lake monsters have some possible realistic theories behind them on what they are and everything like that. But when you start getting into the whole thing of like these things that can like transform into people and to animals, and are able to replicate your voice and everything, like where on our god given earth, where did these things come from? Why were they like? There is no way that like nature grew up with these things along us. I mean, as far as we are aware, that none of these things have ever grown up like this. Again, if you were to argue the fact of like, all right, let's go by like fossil records and stuff like that, there's nowhere in nature that something like this would have evolved and turned into these terrifying creatures that these things are today. There's just no way. So now, what are they? Are Some people think that they might be, aliens, because just on how just the abilities that they're able to do, the fact that they can record your voice, or they hear another try to say something in your voice but sound distorted, the changing into things, the speed, the power. It's like it's so unearthly that people think like if these things really do exist, they can't be anything natural. They have to be something of outer space. I mean, maybe they are, but I believe I don't. I think on the many lists of cryptids that we will probably never know the truth, skinwalkers, especially these other kind of skinwalkers and wendigos, I don't think we are ever going to find out. They are just too dangerous, and they're just way too wild on what can happen. I would I I don't know. I even today, even me just thinking like, what do I think they are? I don't even know. Uh, the abilities that they have are just unearthly. Like it shouldn't be physically possible for these things to happen. But again, kind of goes back to that whole thing of like, is our world a bit more? Is our world has some more magicalness into it that we just don't know, and maybe these things have always been here, and maybe they just live forever, or they just don't, like there's so many unknowns. I can't even speculate, even just like, oh, maybe this or this. Like, I don't even know. I wish I could, but I just don't think I can. And I, another one of the things, I hope it would be kind of very interesting to see a Skinwalker or Wendigo, but just at a safe enough distance. And I've got a loaded shotgun with me because, boy, I will say, the one of those things that close to me, I'm gonna blow one of those guys to smithereens if possible. As much as I would like not to tick one off, I would be ready to defend myself from those things. But I don't know. Skinwalkers are Navajo. These other ones, the Wendigos, they as much as people, government, people don't want to think that something like that does exist. Unfortunately, as crazy as these things sound, they exist. They are part of our world. Now, how they are part of this world or why they're part of this world, I we'll probably never know. I don't even have any suggestions unless there's something, from out of this world. But even then, I don't think I don't think we'll ever know, and they are real. These things are 100% real. Again, I've never seen them myself or anything heard like that, but the amount of things that I've heard from people, like a lot of reports, stories, and everything. Not everyone can be lying about this. Not everyone can be making stuff up for unknown reasons. I like to think that there's more in this world that we don't know, and I like to think that skinwalkers, wendigos are are all here, and hopefully, we will be able to, you know, just people just be smart enough in the fact that they go in the woods, these things are there, and to be alert of them. I I've never been something more dead serious in my life. Be very careful in the woods when it comes to these things. Just be very mindful. Create create like a phrase for you and your people you go out with you. It's like, wait, hold on. Like say, come up with something to like say if they reply back, it's them, and then stuff like that. But yeah, just be careful. And let's see, that's pretty much it. I wanted to go off the beaten path a little bit with this episode instead of talking about more a lot of normal cryptids a lot of people talk about. Let's go on the different side of things and go, skinwalkers and everything else like that. And I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed the fact we went in a different direction to to some what we've had so far. Sure, this is only the third episode, but hey, I wanted to try to mix it up a little bit. Um, and yeah, so I hope you enjoyed. Which what do you think skinwalkers are? Do you think they're more physical, or do you think they're spiritual, or do you think there's something else? Please leave a comment below and tell me what you think. And also make sure if this is your first time listening, welcome. Please hit that subscribe button and like and share it with your friends. If you know people who have seen something, anything at all, people who've seen something they don't tell anyone, or like, come to me. You can tell me your story. Tell me whatever name you want yourself to be. Give yourself a fake name. Whatever, and email me at cryptidtalk91 at aol.com. Email me there, and maybe we'll get to talking, and maybe if I get enough people, maybe I'll have an episode reading people's reports, or maybe if we get some good ones, maybe I'll bring some people on the show and interview them on here and stuff like that. Because I do have, I gotta set it up with them, but I do have a guest for my very first episode, for the very first guest episode. When that will be and everything like that, I don't know. He's a very busy man, but hopefully I'll be able to get him on here, and then over time, maybe here and there, we'll get some guests on the show and everything. And because I know a lot of times when it comes to podcasts and everything, whenever they have like a guest that comes on and it's not a common thing, those episodes tend to be a bit more enjoyable to a lot of people. So hopefully, we'll be able to do that soon. So yeah, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about the show, and also follow the Facebook page too at Cryptid Talk on Facebook. Follow the page there, and that's where I will post links to the episode and anything else that I also came up with too. Because last week, I still have to put the video of me on finding Bigfoot, but I did put the track on there that was found in the Jersey Pine Barrens, and then hopefully we'll go from there. So I hope everyone has a good day, and everyone has a good Memorial Day. Wait, it is Memorial Day, right? Yeah, Memorial Day. Yeah. So everyone have a good safe holiday, and as always, keep your ears and eyes open for the creepiness in store, because you never know what you'll find outside of your door. This has been Cryptid Talk with Michael Madden, and I hope everyone has a good day.